Okay, this is just a test setup that I showed disassembled. This is basically a project I'm calling hydrothermic engine. I'm going to build a heat engine that uses the properties of expanding oil and heat to create a small hydraulic pump that operates via check valve. The first test I'm going to do is I'm going to take a torch to this and see what type of increase we get. Right here I have this marked 12 Celsius is where our current volume is. I'm going to take this torch to it. You see the size of the flame I'm using. Now, of course, this module itself is highly ineffective for doing this. This is just a test mechanism. The actual working unit will consist of a small copper pipe with an even smaller copper pipe inside of it to cool it off. Here's the cooling rig that I have, just a small reservoir. As you can see, we're getting a significant amount of increase in volume there with just that short burst of energy. And give you an exact here. I'll take a temperature reading here in a second. I'm waiting for it to equalize out. And this thing just won't focus. We're at about 90 and climbing because the heat hasn't yet warmed up the water in the cooling coil, which is a pretty significant size compared to the heat chamber. Now, the way bulk modulus works in the equation states that if we were to compress this fluid to halfway down, we would get a certain amount of pressure. Some of the calculations that I've worked on are on the order of 1200 psi. You can compress this oil down to about 1200 psi at the halfway point. So that would be our operating parameter from here to here. Even though it would actually expand all the way to here, the pressure, say, if we close this valve, would reach 2500 psi with what we just saw. But because we let it expand this tall, by the time the pressure gets up to here, it's zero. When we get down to here, it's half the 2500 psi, or 1100 or so, something like that. Alright, I think that's about done. I'm going to kick on the cooling system real quick. That's beyond the scale of my... So that wasn't very much heat, really, to do that. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to mark it and take a better reading. And I'm going to hook up the cooling system real quick. And we're going to watch the level, and you can see the drop's pretty dramatic. So with a properly configured system, a reciprocation could be achieved fairly quickly. I mean, that ain't super fast, but be advised, this is a highly ineffective rig. It's just a test rig to study the dynamics of the process under extremely inefficient conditions. So that's not so impressive, but as I said, the final system will use a far more effective means of cooling and heating the fluid. A low pressure pipe carrying coolant fluid would flow through a high pressure pipe so that you wouldn't have to worry about your pump holding a lot of pressure. I forgot to take a final temperature reading, but don't worry, I'll do it again and post it. Right now I'm at like 21 Celsius to 25 Celsius. Hotter region is usually up top, but not this time. Coolant reservoir is at about 11 Celsius, and I'm using Celsius because I'm going to be doing some equations on this. And thermodynamics almost exclusively always use the metric system because it's not retarded like the English system, in my opinion. I'm not going to sit here and film this forever because, as I said, I'm not studying the effects of the cooling off cycle yet. Next thing I'm going to do is let this cool all the way back down to our, what did I say, 10 Celsius point? I think that was 18 Celsius, 12 Celsius. Get this cool back down to 12 Celsius, and I'm going to close this valve, and we're going to see what type of pressures can be induced. But we already seen that a pretty significant increase in volume is achieved. I'm even thinking about infusing these oils with gases. I don't know if the gases would stay dissolved once you release them under low pressure situations, but anyway, here is the flow rate of the ice water. It's slowly starting to creep down because basically we don't have any circulation inside here. It's now trying to cool off all this steel and all that. So I'm going to shut that off, let it get back down to the 12 Celsius, close the valve, heat it up, and start filming. See what happens. See if we can get that 270 psi real quick.